Hey guys, Chris from 6++ here, and we are here for a hot take video. As you will know, unless you've been living under a rock, everything has just dropped. We've got Arks of Omen, the new rules, a new season, we've got Balance update, we've got new points. It's got the whole world talking, it's got the whole world crying, either tears of joy, rage, selling their Harlequin armies on eBay. Not me. But yeah, it's got everyone talking. We had over 600 messages on our group WhatsApp yesterday. We're all excited, you're all excited, and you probably want to know what you should be thinking about with your new army. Well, we put it to our team members, hey, have 1 or 2 minutes, just chat, what are your thoughts for your army, and then we can piece together the video. It's really informal, it's just a bunch of guys in their phones. Each person has kind of gone about it in a different way and spoken for a different length of time. But yeah, hopefully you enjoy. We're going to have a podcast episode on it in the next week or two where we really try and get to the bottom of what it means for our factions and what it might mean for the meta. So these, as I said, are kind of our hot takes, and we'll go from there. To begin with, I'll go through my factions. There are 3 main ones that I focus on. So for me, first of all, we've got Mech. Obviously they've had quite the fall from grace in over the last year, and they've been really struggling. They've been pretty much at the bottom of the pile. What's changed for them? Well, the biggest issue for them was the secondaries, and those have been tweaked slightly. So now we've got Pigeon Archivolts, which is actually quite a tasty one. That's just been changed slightly, so that's one that I think will be quite popular now. And generally their secondary game has improved, so that automatically lifts the army. Then we've got the fact that their firepower, which is what they were known for, was really struggling in the era of Armour of Contempt. That has now gone as well. So all of a sudden their shooting is going to improve as well. And then finally you've got the fact that they've got some points reductions, which will make this building far more interesting. Breaches and destroyers have got core now. I think there's definitely going to be some room there. I'm definitely going to have a play around with sort of the different models that I've got, test out, see what I like, and see if how it feels on the tabletop. But you're definitely going to see Mech moving up the tables now. Of that I am certain. In terms of the Custodes, they have again had some of their kind of previous nerfs brought back. So now they've got a lot more obsec on their infantry, and on top of that they've got access for their infantry only into stopping the rerolls, the transhuman, all those sorts of things. What that means is they're now going to be a lot more resilient on the table. In recent times, Custodes have been really leaning into Cage's grav tanks and all the dreadnoughts and that sort of thing. But it really wouldn't surprise me if sort of successful builds were based around kind of a big brick, which was just really hard to kill, of the infantry, whilst other things went and did, jobs. Behind enemy lines has drastically improved. It's now 1 unit for only for 3 points. So two lone Alaris Terminators are going to grab you 3 points on turn 2 and 3 just by dropping down into your opponent's deployment zone. That's 6 secondary points just from that. You've got some bikes which can whiz into the deployment zone. Venatari, they've got the obsec now, and they're counting as 2 models, remember. So I think there's definitely some more play there with infantry based lists. So I think that's something which is going to be really interesting, and it might well push them up into near the top of A tier again. And then finally we've got my dear old Harlequins. I've been playing Harlequins for well over half a year now, and only them. So obviously they have been hammered by the nerf. That 5++ is going to be grim. I think it's quite interesting when the light got hit, it kind of felt really doom or gloom all round, and actually that didn't really even touch the sides. People made transitions to Twilight. What is clear to all those players that play Harlequins is that what makes the army function is mainly the secondary game, and secondly the fact they're just slightly harder to kill than your opponent thinks. Nearly every game I play, at some point my opponent will be frustrated because they didn't kill as much as they planned to. So has that changed? Well, the secondary game is still pretty strong. Deadly Performance is now core units for being in the deployment zone of your opponent. And what that means is you can't just dump a Star Weaver in there. So you're probably going to see maybe a slight leaning towards more bikes into lists to just help smooth over that deadly performance. In terms of the resilience, obviously with a 5-up invuln, they're just going to die now. The maths is no longer skewed. So I think what this means for Harlequins is that the top Harlequin players are still going to be brutal with the army, because they're not making the positioning mistakes. They're only giving away units when they have to. And I don't think that's going to change. I know the games I've played with Harlequins, the ones that have gone really well, are where I can track that I haven't actually given away a single unit. Each time a unit has died was because they were scoring points for me, and I knew they would die. So I think the top players are really consistent with that. So I really wouldn't be surprised if Harlequins could still do really well in the hands of many in those few. If we then take a step down, I think the army is just going to become a lot more frustrating, which means that people then remove them. So we could end up with this really bizarre situation where the Harlequin win rate still stays really high, but it's just that the player base is so small. Their output has improved, let's not forget, with Armour of Contempt going away, so the Shuriken's really good, especially because the whole world's probably about to be filled with Space Marines again. And we've got access to a good Death Jester who's going to put out a lot more firepower again. And then we've also got the -6-inch range kind of Mirror Architect ability as an aura now. How impactful that is going to be will depend on the guns in the meta and the ranges. I think Harlequins are going to struggle into guard. I think, although their guns are good at killing Marines, I think they might struggle to trade efficiently now into the Marines. So I think they might well struggle, as I said, in kind of like the hands of your average Joe who loves their Harlequins, but I think they'll still do well at the very top. But I just think they're not going to be as strong as the very top lists from Marine lists and guard lists, and therefore they won't be S tier anymore. Anyway, those are my hot takes. Let's hear what the other guys have to say.
Hello guys, Tom here. I am on a holiday, but obviously 40k never stops, so I will try and react a little bit for you now. Drukhari, literally exactly the same, except Armour of Contempt being gone is probably quite nice for them, so nothing substantial changing. Maybe Witches come back, that's cool. Gene Sealer Cults look real good, real good. Some nice points changes, lots of free war gear, and a lot of stuff being easier to kill. Definitely going to be a really good time for GSC, and some of the secondaries look pretty tasty in that direction as well. So Gene Stealer Cult's definitely coming out of this looking really, really nice. Into a meta I think they were already pretty good in, so very happy about that. Eldar, Harlequins, ouch, it's a shame, but you know. And Craft Worlds maybe benefit from Armour of Contempt getting better. I don't know, that's hard to say at this point. I think I need to see the Craft World secondaries, which I've not seen. But yeah, my other loves Chaos Space Marines. Night Lords probably still rubbish. Chaos Space Marines, I don't know that they're going to look great coming out of this. Looks a bit painful for them, but if they've given them a bunch of nice secondaries, then maybe that's a bit better. So yeah, Gene Stealer Cults all the way. Gonna drop out of the sky, shoot you in the head, that kind of stuff. Tunnel up from underground, I think actually probably more accurate, but we'll go through it in more depth next week, probably, maybe. And I'll play an event with the old rules and be slightly disinterested this weekend. Can't wait. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, Aaron from 6++ here. Hope you're all doing well. Obviously it's been going absolutely crazy on the interwebs at the moment with the drop of the updated points and the new Balance Dataslate. So just thought I'd give you my opinions on my faction, which is Tau. Overall, I think we've come out of it pretty good. It's upsetting, well not upsetting, frustrating to see the points increase on the crisis suits by another 5 points. I do think that it wasn't really needed due to the fact that they're only being taken as one unit really per army. We're not seeing like a spam of them at all. And 40 points was already a lot for a model that with no weapons, so 45 doesn't help much either. Secondly, the crew update. Look, I think fair enough. They do a reasonable amount, and they did reduce the troop tax on the army, but overall, I don't see it having a massive impact, specifically because we've got the new Arks of Omen's detachment, which doesn't which means you don't have to take troops anymore at all. So I don't see that being a massive impact. The secondary changes, there was none for the Tau, which it's fine. It's a bit frustrating. I think Tau do suffer from having good secondaries, but then that is counterbalanced by them being quite lethal and efficient in the shooting. But I would have liked to seen a bit of tweaks on the points or the scoring slightly on them, because yeah, they can be quite difficult to score, and it does telegraph a lot to your opponent what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Finally, I think the removal of Armour of Contempt has put Tau in a really strong position. It really helps out because obviously a lot of our guns are -2 AP and 2 damage, so it does mean that I think if it turns into a Space Marine meta, we're going to be in a very good position. So overall, not many complaints. Pretty average. Looking forward to seeing how it plays out. How is everyone else? How do you feel it's going to play out? Put comments below the video and let us know. Hope you're doing well, and speak again soon. Bye.
Hello everyone, it's Paul here from 6++. I am the resident Dark Angels player, and I'm here to talk about the recent updates, the balance sheet, the points changes that have all come for us. They say loyalty is its own reward, and I think nothing could be said that is truer than this at the moment, as it's been quite a lot of changes. All of them seem to be pretty good for us right now. Most of the things that we want to take or haven't been taken have all either come down in points or got free war gear. In some instances, both of these have been true. Terminators now 33 points, get full war gear upgrades for free, so you can run 10 Thunderhammer Storm Shields, 2 Cyclone Missile Launchers, which is now 330 points, which is an absolute steal for what could be an OBSEC unit as well with permanent transhuman. A lot of the Ravenwing stuff has all come down. Talimasters are cheaper, Samael's cheaper. The Primaris Speeders have all come down. They were already good beforehand. Attack bikes, they're cheaper as well. Outriders, even just normal bikers with their free upgrades come cheaper. So yeah, so lots of good stuff. I guess one of the biggest losses we've got is being able to do mixed winged and keep OBSEC, either with Deathwing or Ravenwing, as you can't now put in, say, a Vanguard with a patrol. With the new detachment, you just get that one detachment, and with the FAQ, they've said that if you want to go pure Deathwing, it all needs to be Deathwing / Inner Circle, and if you want the Ravenwing bonuses, everything's got to be Ravenwing, so you can't split wing and keep the OBSEC for the bikes or Terminators. But I don't think that's a big loss. If you did want to do that, you could quite easily just put in an Ancient or a character with Rights of War, and then you could do the upgraded Ancient with the other banner. So you could, in fact, have 2 lots of OBSEC running around to buff everything. So if you wanted to add in some stuff like the now ridiculously cheap Plasma Inceptors, feel free to do it. I don't think it's going to be too much of a loss to lose OBSEC on all your Terminators. You don't necessarily need it all the time. Adding in Infiltrators now, 100 points with a free Helix. I think they're an absolute bargain now. You could have 2 squads of them, easily clear out your whole backfield from anyone getting near them, except for fast moving targets. One of the biggest losses, I think, though, is the secondaries that we've lost. So the only one that we're going to have now, specifically from the Dark Angels book, is unfortunately Stubborn Defiance, and it's the same as it was in the Nephilim book, which I didn't think was great at all then. I never used it. There is play, I guess, if you wanted to spec into it, where you could have Infiltrators combined with Phobos Librarian, so they can't be shot if they're not the closest. But outside of that, you could probably score 10 if you're lucky, but people know how to stop it nowadays. It's very easily counterable, so I wouldn't rely on that. Death on the Wind's a bit of a shame for Ravenwing, but with the changes to how the doctrines work now, where you can just stay in a doctrine. So if you do go Ravenwing heavy, you can just stay in the Dev doctrine all game. And the changes to the secondary from the Space Marine Codex, where you had to use all the different types of doctrines to score your points. They've lifted the cap on that now, so you could just sit in Dev doctrine, score 2 victory points for everything you kill with a heavy weapon, and max that out easy. And you don't even have to have the restriction of moving 12 inches that you had on the Ravenwing one, which I think is just a buff for that, and you'd max that out insanely quickly, I believe. But overall, I think it's a great thing. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting lists. I imagine there'll be lots of Terminator spam, which is probably what I'm going to be trying out, because I do love the Deathwing Terminators. So I'll be trying out some big, strong, heavy Terminator lists with lots of Thunderhammers, lots of Cyclone missile launchers. See how we go from there. But I'm also interested in trying out the full Ravenwing, because I think you can just get so much in there now, especially as you can just sit in with a 4-pin Vun, +3 to move, advance and still shoot all game. They're going to be so fast and so deadly now, especially without armor and contempt, because with the 4-pin Vun, you're not going to miss it anyway. So I would like to try that out. And I'd even like to just try out doing some mixed stuff, maybe some Terminators with some Ravenwing, chucking some Plasma Scepters in there as well, and just see how we go from there, really. It's all very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from when we finally get to play with all this new stuff in tournaments, and hopefully I'll keep you posted and see how it's going. Thank you very much.
Hey, it's your boy Big D coming to you with my sausage gaunt, doing really great things today. I'm coming from next to my fridge freezer, where I've spent the last 2 days eating ice cream to numb the pain as Tyranids got hit very hard. There were points increases on all my favourite units. You know what they were and what they weren't. The geezer in the video said there would be points breaks for swarms, but there wasn't. They're worse than the Tesco man when you put crisps on your shop and they don't deliver them. I could just sit here and shit on all the changes, but I'm going to, with 2 whole days of contemplation behind me. My biggest hot take really is that Tyranids used to be able to do everything. Now you need to choose one thing, maybe 2 things, and double down into them. For example, Hive Tyrant nerfs, points cost increases, and increases to Tyrant Guard mean that lists will either lean in and take double Hive Tyrant, or take no Tyrants whatsoever. Similarly, Zone throw-ups are way more expensive, but if you build around them, they're still absolute beasts. And people without Bloody Rose or Emperor's Children will simply shit their pants when they see your list. You can also double down into swarms too. Games Workshop clearly have said they want swarms to be good. Well, they can pay for my reconstructive surgery that I will need on my back as I spend most of my game in the movement phase. But luckily guys, don't worry, Games Workshop has your back, because they didn't want you to hurt yourself moving so many models, so they didn't put any points reductions on the swarm units. So big thanks, GW. So, okay, that's me morning. What's exciting moving forward? Well, Space Marines are likely to be the most taken faction. They've got some really good points decreases, and we really kill Marines well. Also, behind enemy lines is so good now that it will really reward you for getting into your opponent's territory. So overall, I do think there's play for us. I think there's a light. I think there is a light. And the units I'm looking at in no particular order, aside from obviously the well-known, really strong things, are Trigon Primes with the Passenger coming out of Deep Strike, having +2 charge is pretty sweet. Gene Stealers in Behemoth. I know Gene Stealers have been a bit sucky, but there's they really do rip Marines to bits. Carnifex spam. Even though I went 1-4 with it at Leeds, I still think there's legs in a similar kind of list. I've seen a good one that Tom played at one of the previous tournaments, and I think there's definitely room there. Exocrines blow Marines to bits, Terminators, etc. Like, they're really good at that. Lictors, underrated. I think 70 points for a model that can really tear a hole in things. And of course, Ripper Swarms, which score behind enemy lines for fun. I've heard a few people say that tanks and anti-tank as well, obviously, will be good now. Well, I'm the kind of guy that likes the look of a horror specs just as much as the next person, but they'll never work. Will they? Thanks for listening. I've been and will continue to be Davey from 6++, and I'll catch you later.
Hi guys, Leigh from 6++ here, the resident Emperor's Children enthusiast. Here to talk to you about the Arks of Omen changes and how they have affected our wonderful Chaos faction. I'm going to split this up today into a few sections. We're going to have the good, the bad and the Slaneshi, and then what the future holds for Chaos as a faction. So the good, what positive changes have come from it. We've got some new secondaries, or secondary changes really, more than anything. Our secondaries, as you know, were awful and left us fishing around the dregs of the shared secondaries. So what's changed? We've got Rise to Glory. Again, is no longer just melee kills from our characters against the opponent's characters, monsters and vehicles. So we can do that in shooting. It's still pretty rubbish. It's going to be extremely hard to do. We have got lots of aggressive killy characters, but it's just not that great. It's going to be very hard to actually get to your enemy's characters if you take this. You only get the CP if you do it in melee, so still probably not worth taking. Shadow Operations for the Dark Gods. Again, the only real change for it is that they've increased the area in the centre of each table quarter where you do the action, which does make it a little bit easier, but the timing of the action obviously still makes it incredibly hard. If it finished at the end of the turn, it'd be a bit better, but it doesn't, which means you have to survive. And without Armour of Contempt, we're a little bit more squishy, so that's going to be even more difficult. The Long War. Now, this is possibly more of a positive because we're getting a few more victory points for flipping objectives, killing things on objectives, and we can score a maximum of 4 victory points per turn. So this actually makes it slightly more viable for possibly a bit more of an MSU trading style of a Chaos list. So that's something to think about. Long War is a bit more of a positive. Emperor's Children have also benefited because of the Adorn the Canvas Eclectics rules. So this is going to enable us to score a lot more highly. I think you're looking at hopefully pegging this one in as not a guaranteed 12, but you should be aiming for at least 12 because it now happens at the end of your turn and you don't have to compete against your opponent. You just have to kill things during the game. So if you kill more in shooting, you kill more in melee, your characters are killing, which they probably are going to be. And you can definitely create a list that enables you to punch well and shoot well in Emperor's Children, getting the benefits of those Blast Masters. You can obviously still score in your opponent's turn if you've got some crazy Overwatch going on as well. But I think this is going to be a massive benefit to Emperor's Children because all we were taking realistically was No Prisoners, Assassinate, Warp Ritual. We never took any of our core secondaries. So next up, the bad. And it has got pretty bad, I think. Armour of Contempt going away is massive. You cannot underestimate how big a deal that is. If you look at the mirror, which is Space Marines, the Space Marines lost Armour of Contempt, but they've just had a swathe of points reductions across the board. All the war gear's free. Everyone's tricked out to the max. And if you look back to Chaos, we've got points increases. We'll come to Legionnaires later, but it's massive. The loss of efficiency and our kind of durability is huge. Our Noise Marines for Emperor's Children are now a lot easier to kill. Terminators, again, we'll come to points later, but that loss of durability on our Terminators, even with all the buffs that they can hold, is going to affect our playstyle dramatically. So Armour of Contempt and its comparative losses to Space Marines is huge. Obviously we've got Grey Knights, we've got Dark Angels, technically Chaos, but we'll just gloss over that. But the fact that you can now take a list of 50 Terminators or 90 Tactical Marines with all the weapons all built in is massive for them, but it makes the game a lot harder for us. So, I would say that's the bad. Armour of Contempt is bad. And then the Slaneshi, which is just kind of pure freaky ugliness. Abaddon has gone up 50%. Or 50%, not 50%, 50 points. 50 points, which although isn't the biggest points change, when you tie that into all the units he works with in our lists, i.e. the Terminators also going up in points, the Marks of Slanesh also going up in points, the current lists we're running, I don't know, we're looking at around a 100-point increase, maybe 15 on the supporting characters because of their marks of Slanesh. Abaddon's 50 points, 35 points for the Terminators in total if you're running the classic 10 with Black Rune. So that in itself has seen a big shift in our list makeup and the current kind of list design that we're generally running for tournaments. So how does that kind of change us for the future? So maybe we'll see Abaddon in a few being taken out of our lists in place of the Arks of Omen detachment, which allows us 4 HQs. So we may see the inclusion of more Lord Discordants to combat the very cheap Space Marine vehicles, because they may be bringing a few more tanks to the scene. And the fact that we've got Imperial Guard coming out of the woodwork as well with all the Layman Russ goodness. So maybe Lord Discordant might start popping up. I'm excited to have 4 slots because that means I can start to bring Lucius the Eternal, who into Space Marines has got a very good profile. The fight last for free is excellent, but we didn't see him before because of the 3 slots for our HQs. So Abaddon may disappear. We may start seeing a few more other things, although for 50 points he still is viable in our list. Terminators. Now again, they were the delivery system for Abaddon. So if we remove Abaddon from the list, do we need the Terminators anymore? So could we see a rise in Possessed because they don't carry a mark and therefore their points have stayed the same? They don't have any equipment. They haven't changed really, and they were very efficient for their points. So maybe we'll start to see more lists with 10 Possessed and some smaller units of Possessed because of their movement speed. The 10 blob can still take the Black Rune. They've got toughness 5. They've got a 5 up in Vun, so they are very durable. And when paired with that Master of Possession, can get that +1 to wound, which is pretty tasty. So that's pretty good. And with their -2 AP, they're still a threat, especially with Armour of Contempt gone. Chosen, although they are now more squishy, they still are a cheap way to pack a punch, especially if you hide that punch inside a Rhino. So maybe we're going to see an MSU Chaos meta. Maybe we'll see some big blobs of Chosen and Possessed doing the rounds as well. Or alternate number 3 is maybe we'll see 12 units of Noise Marines. Noise Marines spam may be coming soon because they get the mark inbuilt. They don't have to pay for it. And with the new Adorn the Canvas Eclectic secondary, they fit very well into that as well for scoring points with the shooting. So lots of interesting ideas to try out and play test before we get to the next major tournaments. But I think we have opened up a lot of things to trial, which is also possibly a good thing. We could have had that in good. The fact that we're not just set in this Black Rune, Abaddon, 10 Terminator blob factory where we're just charging through the middle of that board. Maybe we're going to have a bit more fun and use those units that have been sitting gathering dust. Well, that's my takes on it, guys. So again, feel free to comment if there's anything I've missed or anything that you think you'd recommend taking. What does this open up for you? What are you going to be playtesting yourselves? But I'll sign off on that. See you later.
Hi guys, 6++ Grandad Dave here, responding to the new releases and updated books. For those that don't know me, I'm a Grey Knight player, so we've got some interesting changes that have just come through. I think, you know, if I'm to respond to that and look at the positives of what's happened and what's, you know, what changes are inbound with the updates, you know, we could look at Armour of Contempt first. We could see that as a negative, but I think we need to take the positives of that. You know, obviously the negative is we become a bit more squishy, but in terms of the positives, I think it makes some of our unit choices more viable again. You know, we've got Dread Knights there with the weapons that took a bit of a hit when Armour of Contempt came out. With the loss of that, we've certainly got more punch with those units again. and certainly with our weapons, our melee weapons, they've taken a much needed buff. You know, where we've got swords, which, you know, on the strikes, which have always been great at -3 AP, but the halberds and demon hammers become more viable again at -2 AP, and you know, the loss of their extra save against opponents with the -2 AP, that I think they're going to be useful again. Other positives to take note of: cheaper troops. You know, we've got strike squads, interceptor squads, and terminators all taking points drops. So, you know, that's a much needed buff for us, and I think, you know, we're going to get, you know, much more bang for our buck there, and certainly going to get more troops within our lists, and certain builds might become a bit more viable rather than the standard strike interceptor squads. You might see more terminator builds coming in, so you know, that's much needed. I think that's a really good move by Games Workshop there. You know, and the free special weapon upgrades on the troop choices as well. We're going to have some Psy Cannon builds going in, and, you know, maybe some more flamers, etc. So, you know, really good stuff going on there, and much more punch in our troop units. Extra bonuses on the characters as well. You know, points drops across the board on characters, you know, named and standard characters. You've got Drago coming in at 165 instead of 180. You've got Voldus, who's not really used an awful lot on the table, but I think that's probably down to the fact that it's Ward Makers, and Ward Makers aren't a great faction choice. But with the fact that Voldus is now 135, I think, you know, he's a hell of a punchy character. He can cast 3 powers, and I just think that maybe, you know, people might be swayed to start using him in a build, and, you know, again, that'll lead to different list builds and different choices there. You've got Dread Knights becoming more viable again. You know, with 3 teleporter upgrades. I've spoken already about the fact that their ranged weapons will have more punch again with the loss of Armor of Contempt. 3 teleporters, you know, that they're just going to be 3 to 4 in a list again. So you get the 3 standard Dread Knights and the Grandmaster. I think you'll probably start seeing that again on the table. Secondary choices for us. You know, Ritual, a little bit of a nerf there, where that's going up to Warp Charge 6. I think that's going to be less of an option for us. I don't think that we choose much. I think the Teleport Assault secondary, whereas that's now going to be 5 VP per successful, you know, success on that one. I just think that that's going to be used, and obviously with the teleporters on the Dread Knights, you're making them able to use that secondary, and that, you know, the cheaper interceptors as well. I just think that that's going to be a really useful secondary, and I think it's going to be a good choice for a lot of people. You've also got for the they fixed the Demon Slayer Warlord trait on Drago. Obviously he's going to be on the table rocking at 165 points. You know, against the Demon Codex, the fact that his Warlord trait has been fixed and they don't get the Demon save anymore, that's going to be great. Obviously, the slight negative there is you're still going to have the Primarchs, etc., that will get an invuln save, but, you know, at least we've got that wording fixed on his Warlord trait. So, yeah, I think, you know, that's a few of the positives we've got to take from what's going on. I think it's going to be an interesting few months before the release of 10th for Grey Knights. We're going to see how we play out in the meta, see what these changes do for us, and hopefully we'll become a little bit more, you know, punchy in what we do, and you know, have a bit more of a success rate where we sit currently with a, you know, a win ratio of 42% in the current meta. I think, you know, we might actually hopefully get a few more wins on the tables. Nice to speak to you. Take care. Speak soon. All the best.